Hello and welcome to episode 95 of the Foundry Roundtable, the podcast exclusively covering the Foundry for Star Trek Online. I'm your tame Foundry author, Drogon1701. With me is a man who refused to divulge emails showing him to be an Undine spy, Greendragoon.
Yeah, well, I'm not an Undine spy. I'm a Klingon spy.
Then why do you have emails that say you're an Undine spy?
You can't prove it.
No, I don't think I'm ever going to be able to prove this, but still. Also with me is the genius behind Seela's escape from custody, Markhawkman.
No, sorry. That wasn't me.
Well, there's a reason all these things are lies that I say. But here's one thing that isn't a lie. We have with us one of our regular guests, SirBoulevard.
And I hate to break this to you, the reason everything you say is a lie is you're still trusting Starfleet intelligence. You know they don't have any.
It's a contradiction in terms.
Better that than Klingon intelligence.
All we know is Romulan intelligence has gone away.
And,
my dogs have been searching for Klingon intelligence for years.
And despite the critical success, we've still never found it. So there's not too much Foundry news going on. We did get the info for the missing doors on Tribble to Taco, and he indicated that that was an oversight that hopefully will be fixed. We should keep an eye on that and check after the patches and see, because who knows if it'll make it into patch notes. Let's see. There's not really too much else other than that as far as Foundry news, but I am going to open up this show with a little demonstration of something I have been working on. So I'm going to share my screen with Dragoon, and hopefully we will get a decent frame rate for this particular test. Okay, Dragoon, are you seeing my screen now?
Yep.
Okay. Set up a little map here that we're going to load up. So, Dragoon's tech topic the other day about Omni-Lights got me thinking of things I could do with them, and I made a little proof of concept here. So, any of you guys played the original Unreal?
Oh man, you just way back.
No. Yeah, this is way back to the 90s here. So you've at least heard of it.
Yes. Well, wasn't that similar to the old Aliens versus Predators games? Because I played those.
Well, there was a sequence. Getting some weird feedback through somebody there.
It's Skype.
Okay. So there was a sequence early on in the game where you've crash landed on this alien planet, and there's all sorts of ruins and creepy things, but you haven't met any bad guys yet. So you're in this installation, and you go down this hallway, and the lights start clicking off one by one down the hall towards you until just complete blackness, and then bam, enemy jumps out at you. So I got to thinking, can I do that in the Foundry with these Omni lights? Because the one thing we don't have all that much control over is lighting. So I have been working on that this afternoon, and here are the fruits of my labor. Reset map just to make sure. Okay, so I've got a little hallway here. Ignore the texture overlap. I have not had time to get rid of that. This is just a little proof of concept. Okay, we got a console down here at the end.
Light limits.
Yeah, and I haven't messed with the placement of the lights or anything like that. So you can see we still have several lights going all the way down the hall. And when I hit this, nothing happens. Just wait. Oh, one by one. There they go.
I'm going to take a shot in the dark and say that you're killing NPCs in an environmental field for a timing element.
Actually, no, that didn't work.
Oh, really?
And see, oh no, bluegill coming at us. Anyway, that is the concept. No, but I am killing NPCs. It is using a timer mechanic to do this. So I've got my NPCs down here. I've got 3 captain level fed mobs. Okay, so the whole sky castle here is 500 feet up in the air, or 500 meters, or whatever the measurement is. And I've made these where I set them to be 500, but each individual NPC is down at 0 on the ground. So there are a bunch of captain level fed mobs down there. And then when I hit that console, it spawns 1 bluegill ensign. They kill him. That spawns the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And the lights are keyed to go off when each of those are killed in sequence. I did not use the volume because it seemed like it was hard to see what exactly was happening, but it seemed like they were, I don't know, they weren't, the lights weren't clicking off when the NPCs were supposed to die. So I don't know, something was going wrong there.
It's probably, I think I know what's probably going on there. When you kill an NPC with an environmental hazard, it might be not registering as this mob completed. Mm-hmm. It's just
when you spawn it in one and it dies, it would die as soon as it spawns, and it's just not enough.
Yeah.
What does work is if you spawn a space volume over an existing NPC and kill it, that will do the complete component will trigger.
That actually gives me an idea of how you might be able to work around that. Is if you just have basically 2 separate areas onto the side. One has most of the mob that you're killing, and the other one you have, your high-level friendly mob that's doing the killing, and then just one of the NPCs from the mob getting killed off like that and spawning the new ones in so that there's only one mob being killed. You might be able to get it going a little faster.
Yeah, because then they only have to shoot 1 incident instead of 5.
That would be not a bad idea.
It's always fun, the elaborate
because it does
we'll
move a little bit slow, and
sort of
that's
things.
the only problem that I see right now is it does move a little slow.
And that's what you need to solve.
But it's certainly does work, so that's kind of nice.
Give us timing elements and you can stop this madness.
Can stop the senseless slaughter of NPCs just to time things.
Remember, Taco, we know where to send our EPO friends.
I don't think there's much Taco can do on that front, but someone at Cryptic.
So that's what I've been working on. I haven't done much else because, of course, we've been having all our fun crystalline entity events, which I was crazy and did on 26 characters.
Must have a whole lot of dilithium.
It is. It absolutely is. So let's ask our guest, SirBoulevard, what have you been working on?
Okay, what have I been working on? Well, I haven't been doing too much stuff directly in the Foundry, simply because, things have been kind of crazy recently. One of the things I have been working on is I'm finally doing some follow-up work to my Honor of series, and that is I am preparing a document with all of the Farasan culture that I ended up writing, and I have no clue when it's going to get done. I mean, I've been slacking on this for a year already, but the goal is to eventually make it available to everyone. So
That reminds me that I forgot to actually make a copy of all those slides I put together that people can download. I posted on the forum that I made slides out of all of the old Romulan mystery missions, but I forgot to actually put them somewhere where you can download them.
Be a good resource for people if we get some more guys who are interested in recreating those old missions. All right. Dragoon, what have you been working on?
Well, like you, I'd finished up the crystalline entity event. I've got my anti-proton torpedo. But in the Foundry, I've been doing a little bit, not too much. But I have been kind of working on a ship interior for Part 3, and I actually have a picture here. It's another Federation starship, but it's not unlike what I've done up till now. It's not the player ship, so I've been kind of trying to come up with ways to make it look Federation, but not necessarily make it look different than the player ship. So it's visually obvious that you're somewhere else. This is the start. I mean, it's still kind of a work in progress. I think I want to do something with the ceiling. The trick will be just that in order to all the space that I need to follow that I don't run out of objects, because these kind of hallways can eat up assets really quick.
It's very similar, actually, to one that I came up with for like an NX ship interior, where you use those wall pillar console thingies in between, and I just use the holodeck arch for the walls and ceiling. Where I see you've got it down there for the door, I've used it for the whole hallway.
Yeah, I thought about that. I didn't want to make it the hallway too narrow. I want to be able to do battles and whatnot in it. Plus, A, they're really hard to pay into place, and B, they're not that long, which means I'd have to have a whole ton of them. And like I said, I need to keep this build somewhat light so I can make the space large enough for what I need.
That makes sense, and it's something everybody has to balance.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the fun part will just be trying to keep it visually interesting and still efficient.
But it looks good. It's a way to break up the monotony of just the straight walls and ceiling.
Yeah.
All right, Mark, what have you been working on?
Well, if some of you might remember, I had a long time ago published this mission that was incomplete that I called TAS Redux. Well, when the top 3 system went live, it got stuck in as a top 3 mission. So it got a bunch of plays just because it's there. And, you know, people stuck in a whole bunch of comments about it. And, well, you know, let's see here. In the last week alone, it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Got at least a dozen over the last week, and like, I guess I should go back and finish this, especially if people are playing it as a top 3 mission. So I worked on that for a little while. I haven't quite finished it yet, though, because, well, it's one of those things where I got to this one point and I kind of realized that I'd almost written myself into a corner, because, you know, you go through steps A, B, and C in a reasonably logical sequence. Then you get to step D, and you're like, wait a second. That's what we're here for? Because for step D, you find out that the spatial pocket that you're in isn't what you thought it was at the first glance. The reason you're there gets kind of hand-waved, and then you more or less end up doing what's I guess you could say, side mission, or a second mission that's kind of follows on the first one, because you get there and then you realize that the people that are there need help because they're, well, basically they got infected with Borg nanites. And, well, you know what happens when people get infected with Borg nanites. But see, that's what I was kind of thinking, is writing yourself into corners, because I just kind of couldn't think of at first a reasonably good way of actually writing that out. But I came up with an idea, and something that seems like it's worth going with. So, I'll probably get that done sometime in the next month or so.
You know, that's something I never had really thought of, is, you know, what happens in people who have, you know, like a test mission or something incomplete that is, you know, had been played enough to get it into that top 3 system. Well, it's going to get a ton more plays, even if it's not in a playable state.
Guess don't leave your test missions published.
Yeah, don't leave.
Also, one
like
thing that is probably something that I should do is that while I put in the actual mission description that it is incomplete, people who pick it up as a top 3 mission will never see that.
That's true. Absolutely true. So if you have a mission that's incomplete and for some reason you want to leave it up, you know, put in the very first dialogue that this mission is incomplete.
Yeah, I think I'm going to do that. However, even with that in mind, its average rating is still above 3 stars, which kind of surprises me, given the general incompleteness of it, I guess you could say.
Out of curiosity, what door is it at?
Minos Corva in Alpha Trianguli.
Yeah, that's another thing, is you could put your door at somewhere where it's not going to get into the top 3 system. I mean, I usually just use that one door.
Well,
because I mean, if you
put it at Minos Corva, because that was one of the closest things on the map to the location where the Star Charts book puts the Delta Triangle.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that, I mean, as long as it wasn't an actual mission, you could have put it wherever you wanted.
Ah, well. Let's see. Darkness Between the Stars has managed to get up to an average rating of 3.5. And Bavat's Legacy is actually almost all the way up to an average rating of 4. Which, again, those are things that I wrote. And actually, the way I originally wrote the mission was something that worked perfectly with the top 3 system. And I guess not very many people put their missions at those locations.
I think at the moment you're going to find a lot of planets like that where the pool isn't huge, so it's going to take missions that are, you know, down in the 3-star rating average range. But hopefully we'll keep seeing more people add things, and although in a month or 2 months or whenever it takes to get season 10 out, we're going to have a lot more doors to work with.
Yeah.
In the extreme.
Well, one thing I just thought I forgot to mention is that I still haven't finished my Oath of Patrol mission yet. And I think I'll try to at least get a rough version of that published before I go back to working on working on TIS Redux.
Meanwhile, I'm going to be taking advantage of us getting all those new doors to port over my my Romulan Republic mission Nova Roma for the Klingon-aligned Romulans, because now we're going to have Retor 3 as a door for KDF, and I wanted it to be available for all Romulans.
Yeah, definitely a huge boon incoming. It's going to be a
Uh-huh.
wild new frontier.
It certainly is. So, even though there isn't much Foundry news, there was a new featured episode released this week. I take it we've all played it. Take your silence to
I
be
may have
agreement.
played it 4 times.
Well, the
played
way
it-
we were all talking before, I mean, before the show started, that I was pretty sure that we had all played it.
Yeah.
I played
Um,
through twice. The first time it bugged out on me, but the second time I got to see the full ending.
Post-patch. Dragoon, why don't you throw up our spoiler alert thing, though?
All right. One of these days I'll add some sound effects to that thing.
Because, of course, one of the things we like to do on this show is, talk about the new featured episodes as they come out.
And then pester the devs for things from them.
Exactly. I can think of a few things from this one.
I think we all can.
But in case
Maps,
anybody out there
and,
hasn't played it,
the assets on the maps.
this one is Uneasy Allies. Sorry, not Uneasy Alliances. And it deals with kind of picks up a little ways after the previous episode, which was, the name of it escapes me.
It's
What's Left Behind.
it's actually after that. Even it's after Dust to Dust.
Yeah, it's after that, but it doesn't
But it
really
follows
go
up
into much from Dust
What's
to
left
Dust.
behind?
Yeah.
It's a direct follow-up to What's Left Behind because, of course, we found Sela. We probably should have left her there. Maybe. We'll see. And, of course, from the lore blogs that came out right before this episode, we know that she escaped with the help of Gaius Selen from the crew of the Lisette.
Which, by the way, I'm just going to make the point of the fact that they tied that into the story a little bit, but it just creates this hilarious coincidence of we just happened to be passing by Hobus like 10 minutes after she broke out of New Romulus.
Well, contrived coincidences is the lifeblood of fiction.
Well, I mean,
Because you wouldn't want to hear the story about the 99 other
plot
times that nothing happened.
Yeah, that's something that got brought up on the forums, is that while it seems like it's a whole bunch of random stuff, when you think about the fact that, you have the ship and its crew doing stuff for an entire year, they're not going to show the actual episode. They're not going to make episodes out of them spending a week cataloging gaseous anomalies on the edge of the neutral zone.
Oh,
They're
you make a
going-
movie out
the
of that.
times when there's a crisis and you check in and there's another ship that's closer, so they're going, so it's back to normal for us. That doesn't make the episode cut.
Yeah.
Not unless that ship is under the control of an interdimensional god devil or something. Like yours.
Interdimensional god devil, what? Anyway,
Guessing that's a reference to the player?
I thought
think
Megan got
he's-
killed.
yeah.
I'm mocking Drogon's totally not a Stargate reference.
Oh, you should see my actual character.
I know.
I've posted screenshots. He's totally not a Jaffa, that's for sure. Don't even think it. So we're getting contacted by what's her name? Vanzil? Is that her?
we got a first name for her this time. She's
We did.
Kyla Van Zyl.
Van Zyl from Voyager. Happens to be in a shuttlecraft that happens to be in the Hobus system for some ostensible purpose that I can't remember, and ran across the freighter that just happens to have Sela on it.
Actually, Kyla claims that the reason why she was flying past Hobus is because she was going to Trill for a vacation, more or less.
Which is funny because if you look at the map,
nowhere near Trill.
Yeah.
Actually, where
the-
is Trill on the Stowe map? Because I have never.
It's way in the Alpha Quadrant.
It's way in the
It's
Alpha
in one
Quadrant.
of those brand new sectors that they're adding. It's over by Cardassian.
They actually have Trill in there.
Yeah, they have Trill in there, and here's the thing. It's at the bottom end of those new sectors. So she is literally going the wrong way from the gateway.
So if you're paying attention to that, then you immediately know something strange is going on.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we don't have Trill in game yet, but we will in season 10.
And where they place Hobus, it's basically she's made a wrong turn at Albuquerque and has ended up in New York when she was going to L.A.
But in any case, you arrive just in time to destroy a Romulan ship, which interestingly, and I'm sure Pax is very interested in this, it's a Romulan military ship, not a Tal Shiar. And so there are still remnants of the old Imperial military out there who are loyal to Sela, which I always said, back when Legacy Romulus was getting formatted, I always said that, Sela, comes from a military background, and she would probably have more of those guys on her side than she would have Tal Shiar.
I mean,
it's definitely worth noting that in the mission, Sela kind of gives you an idea of the size of what's left of the Empire. When you exclude the Tal Shiar, the amount of the Star Navy that's actually left is ridiculously tiny. She basically says yeah, we don't even have enough people to patrol our own space. We know it.
which is why you can get away with violating their space so easily. Who's going to stop you? Tal Shiar, well, they're not even working in the Star Empire's best interest anymore.
Which I got the impression that there's not many of them left either.
Yeah. From what we've seen, because I think we got the implication that who is it, that intelligence girl that hates Commander Jirok in Delta Rising? I mean, we get the implication that she's a recently defected Tal Shiar agent to the Republic.
Oh, is she the one who gives you the patrol missions?
Yeah, the ones that are horribly unethical. Shooting up our guys.
Oh, the Romulan intelligence officer. I don't remember her name.
Yeah, the sub
she does
Saiyan or something.
And if that's the same one that you have in the Romulan Republic storyline, she actually mentioned at some point in the Romulan Republic storyline that she used to be a Tal Shiar officer, and that she quit the Tal Shiar because the Tal Shiar was too evil for her liking.
But that could just as easily be a lie. We know that pretty much after Hakeev died and Sela was kidnapped, things went to hell for the Empire, and the politicians turned in on each other. There was chaos, and just a bunch of people defected over to the Republic because it was the most stable option.
Sure.
So I would imagine that implies that the Republic has seen a recent growth in both resources and territory.
And worth noting that in one of the dev blogs, they started acting very much like the Empire towards Sela when they captured her.
Well, you got to remember these are still Romulans.
Mm-hmm.
And almost all of them would have grown up in the Empire
and hating Sela.
And
Not to
hating
mention,
Sela.
a lot of I think we as Americans or something similar, British or whatever, tend to try to ascribe our conventions to the Romulans, who are not part of the Federation, are not bound by Federation law. So there isn't this. While they may be tons better than the Star Empire. They may not have all of the conventions of prisoner treatment and whatnot that the Federation
Well,
has.
They do
Well-
have some, because you get the fun of Sela playing their system and
Yeah.
Well, also-
demanding representation and things like that.
She makes a specific note of there's a treaty in place with the Federation and the Klingons. And it's probably like, the Geneva Conventions. It's generally considered like, if you're part of that you have general rights among all these different nations. You have to follow this treaty, and
The
it's
Klingons
reasonable
are
to.
totally going to be about that.
Yeah, but Klingons do have lawyers, and they just tend to be very subtle with their not following crap.
Well, and
And-
not following something that you put your name on is not honorable.
Well, one thing to consider here is that the Republic, the one big thing they were not doing is that they were not torturing Sela. They just locked her in a cell and told her they weren't going to let her out until she told them something they wanted to hear.
Well, maybe they should have tortured her.
So in essence,
Got all
they're
these
actually
Tal Shiar defectors, they probably don't, all of them have the morals that your average Romulan Republic citizen might have. Utilize them.
But it's funny though. I mean, as soon as they grant her the rights she wants, she escapes. Uses to escape.
Yeah, so
I mean,
obviously they shouldn't have.
Well, the interesting
That
thing
was the whole thing, is that it looks like she really kind of planned that her escape, and that's the reason why she was making those specific demands, because she'd come up with a way to use those to her advantage.
it's worth
Which, as
noting.
we find out, go ahead.
Well, it's worth noting that the thing that makes her escape is her lawyer actually broke the rules at one point and gave her a pad, which was something that she was denied, and something that we deny our prisoners. If we know someone's a hacker, we don't let them do it. There was a plot point in Enterprise even when what was his name, Eric Soon.
Amar Singh. Oh wait, that's not right.
Yeah, no, Eric Soon, because it's Data's father's great-great-grandfather. He broke out of prison once off screen before the episode using a pad, and so they said, okay, fine, no more pads, you get pen and paper because you can't break through a door with that. And the Republic officers make the point of, we're not even giving her that because she'll use it to kill whoever brings her food. And, her lawyer went against that, which was him being incompetent. So, there's that thin line of, okay, not giving her counsel, that's them. That's the whole Republic being really corrupt. The lawyer saying, just going, oh yeah, forget security clearances, give her a computer. That's
Not necessarily
stupid.
corrupt, more incompetent or inexperienced.
Actually, if I remember the way that Devlog went right, is that she was actually allowed to have a pad. It's just that the pad they gave her was one that had allegedly been, I guess you could say,
It was locked to read
tinkered with.
only.
Scrubbed, yeah, and it was.
Scrubbed is one.
It
way
only
to say
had certain stuff on it, but obviously it was
apparently-
enough.
Well, as
Apparently, that one guard that she was seen talking to swapped the pad for one that actually worked.
yeah, and that brings up again how many of the agents who defected over to the Republic are still loyal to the Empire and just went there for out of confusion. Yeah. Anyways, I think we're getting way off topic from the featured
Yes,
episode.
we are. We do learn that the reason she escaped is that she reprogrammed Mr. Gaius Len, which is a real shame for him. And so once you essentially have captured her, she spins this tale to you about what does she talk about? The Iconians, right? She starts talking to I still have information. And then you get a call from your higher ups, which for the feds it's Quinn, right? And for the KDF it's Jim Pock with his
And
new
for the-
voice actor.
Romulans, it's Admiral Carrick.
Yep, it's
Yeah,
Carrera.
Carrera.
Carrera,
Whatever.
that guy. And they essentially tell you to just go with it.
Which I think is funny because I love the dialogue options because it's pretty much like, okay, you know what? We're just going to shoot you. Don't shoot her. Damn it.
Yeah, at this point, it's like, please just let me shoot her.
Well, I liked how, if you guys saw Yezrol's playthrough that came out on YouTube today, he was basically like, all right, I won't shoot to kill, but I'm still putting a cap in your leg.
So, advice for Foundry authors: if you have a long-running villain, you know, at some point, just give us the option to just shoot him, because it will be very satisfying.
Yeah,
Just
but then you
blam
can
right
never
in
use
right in
that
the head.
use that villain again.
Oh yeah, I mean, you got to pick your moment, but
Well,
you know.
I tell you, they did it great through the episode because it keeps coming back to you. You keep getting the option of you want to shoot her.
I love that the part where you have the option to tell her to run through the stupid laser beam maze herself.
Yeah,
Yes.
that was good. There's a lot of humor in this episode, and I'm not sure how much of it is intentional and how much is just responses and things that we find funny.
Or maybe Kestrel's in our heads. She knows what our response is.
And Kestra
Could
probably
be.
reads the feedback on the forum. Not that she actually talks about what she thinks of the feedback, but she probably reads it.
Well, I hope she listens to some of the Let's Plays, because, I mean, I've been saying for a long time that, you know, the thing that gives me the most and the best feedback on a Foundry mission is to watch somebody play it, like Useroll in his Foundry Frolics. I get ideas from it. I get, you know, things I need to fix, and, you know, all kinds of great stuff. So I hope the devs do that at least, because that's a great resource.
And I know they do to a degree because Yezrol and I worked on the issues with the TR-116, and it was that Let's Play we did together. He was how they fixed it.
And sometimes if you got a video demonstration of something that's wrong, it's much easier to see, oh, okay, that's what's going on.
Yep.
So, let's see, where are we in the mission? Okay, so we
talked to Quinn.
Yeah, and then we go down to the Hobus station, which is a reuse from which episode?
It's on the
Terrace.
The
Romulan
Romulan
side.
Republic side.
Yeah.
Terrace, isn't it?
It's not Terrace. It's a different one. It's Revelations.
Oh, okay.
So I haven't
Yes.
actually played the new Terrace episode.
Yeah, it's the new Terrace takes place on Iconia.
That is
Revelations.
right.
Revelations, not to be confused with Revelation, the one in Delta Rising, takes place at Hobus, and it's basically a prequel to Terrace, where you're playing as the Tal Shiar spy, and you find out that they're tracking Terrace in Hobus. And so you go down there and you shoot it up, and then Terrace kind of spills the beans on what she's trying to do, which is go back in time with the help of the Iconians and stop the Hobus event from happening. And then the Tal Shiar attack, blowing your cover, and then the gateway explodes. Terrace has run through to Iconia. You jump through the gateway, and then you happen to end up on Hakiv's bridge and get brainwashed, and that starts mind games.
Mm-hmm. Which, funny enough, this episode is also a follow-up to that one.
Yes, it is.
To Revelation. But
Revelation.
we get to that a little bit later, because we go through the Hobus station. And that's actually where we find Sela. Is the Hobus station. And then she surrenders to you there. And then you talk to her. We were getting a little ahead of ourselves, actually, with the Sela conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And then you say that, oh, I know where there's another gateway. Nopada.
Well, you don't go there yet. First, you go back to her freighter.
Yeah, you go back to the freighter. Which, okay, so here's the thing that I think would be the awesomest for the Foundry is somehow they made almost like a working view screen for that freighter.
I know exactly how they did it.
Enlighten us, please.
Okay, so this is something because I actually had talked with Taco Fangs in the past about how they could get, because the view screens in Star Trek are 3-dimensional. So how do you emulate that in the engine? Well, the only way to do it is you cut out actually a hole. This is what they did originally with the Origin bridge, but they did that as a backdrop.
Just a window.
Yeah, it's just a window. But what they did for this one was they put a one of the force field effects over it, and then they made a new warp field graphic, because probably like a cone or something, so that it's like really close, so it looks like whatever angle you're looking at, it looks different. And then later on, there's a cutscene, and your ship is there, but you notice that you only see it from like this certain angle, and that's to prevent breaking of immersion, because they're probably just popping your ship model in the middle of the special effect.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't just an opening. It was a forced perspective.
Yeah,
and the interesting thing is it is your ship.
Yeah, well, it's really easy.
Well, I mean, if they can spawn your bridge officers, they can spawn your ship version of you.
Well,
actually, here's the question: is can we get that in the Foundry?
Considering that, I noticed something really amusing about this when you do it while teamed, is that when you see your bridge officers in the cutscenes, if you're teamed, it will show you bridge officers, but it won't necessarily show you your bridge officers.
Yeah,
the ones you had with you.
Well, when I did, we had 3 players, 2 of which had 1 bridge officer each, but not me. So when you do the scene where you get done talking to Sela and beam back to your ship, I see myself beam up, and I see the 2 bridge officers beam up with me, even though they're not even my bridge officers.
What does it show on the view screen when you're teamed, I wonder?
Oh, it still shows my ship, but you know.
You were there, but...
To the other players, does it show their ship? When they're in the unit
probably.
at the same time?
Yeah, that's...
I mean, because I see myself talking to Sela, and in all of the cutscenes where you see your character as part of the cutscene, it doesn't usually show the other players. There is one exception, and I think that's the scene where Sela kicks Terrace off the ledge. I think that one actually showed the full party.
So I'm wondering if this is almost like a detail object that is programmed to show your ship, a small version of it.
I think it's probably something along the lines of how they display your captain doing things during cutscenes. I want to say it's probably not a detail object. It's probably some kind of a special NPC.
Yeah, it's...
Could be.
You know how it is when you have that bug where occasionally you beam down as your ship?
God, I haven't seen that since beta.
Yeah, it's basically just because the way that happens...
Funny,
well, the way that bug is, because this has been brought up numerous times, and they've told us how this bug happens, is when the server talks to your client, sometimes there's a lag there, and it forgets to pull your ground character, and it's because your spaceship and your ground character are just different models for your character.
Yeah.
And it's the type of map that determines movement and powers and so forth. So what they've done in this cutscene is there's probably an invisible thing there, and when the cutscene goes, it triggers the... they just pull the model that you use for your spaceship, because it's probably the full-size model, and because of how far back, it looks smaller on the screen. Because I noticed that...
Because I noticed... Oh, sorry.
It's fine. Because the one thing I did notice was because Brendan flies, this Ambassador heavy cruiser, but my KDF and Romulan characters fly little birds of prey, and I noticed that both ships were roughly the same size on the view screen. So I kind of made the realization, it's just pulling that model.
Interesting. Because one observation that I made from seeing instances where people got recostumed as ships on ground is that for whatever reason, it draws the ships as if they're scaled to ground character size. and they're not scaled the same way they would be in sector space.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, they are literally scaled that way in space. It's just everything else is scaled to that level.
And they are messing with the scale in Season 10. They've shrunk our ships quite a lot.
In order to make the
On sector space.
in sector space.
universe bigger.
Mm-hmm.
Size is relative.
And it worked.
Size is relative. It absolutely is. So, moving along, we go to Nopada, to the ruins of Hakiv's base there, which is being picked over by the Tal Shiar.
Who are hilariously frustrated with Hakiv's security.
And it's pretty obvious that the guys that were left behind there, that's sort of a dead-end job in the Tal Shiar. Mm-hmm. And literally dead after we get done with them, of course.
Oh wait, I just thought of something. Did you mention the reference to Obisek?
Oh yeah,
we did hear something about Obisek. What was it?
The dead
guards.
Remans in the base.
Yeah,
The Hobus base.
The guards the Roman Republic sent to Hobus after you secured it, and after everything was more settled and they could actually spare security forces, they sent Obisek's Remans to handle it because they could be trusted. It also is
except they didn't handle it.
No, they didn't. Well, and if you combine it with the new version of Terrace, which I know not everyone here has played, it's implied that the Remans who betrayed Terrace in that mission were part of Obisek's faction.
Mm.
And so they already had because you see them running into the vault in that mission, through the gateway. So they were probably sent there because they already knew all about Terrace's stuff, and were sent back because they were the only ones that could handle it. I spot threads like this.
I miss them completely sometimes. So, and it's actually a new version of the Nopada map. It isn't the original one, any of the original ones. It's got this neat entrance to the base, which is like sand dunes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's...
Yeah, and they imply that sand dunes have moved over it.
Well, actually, no. What it is you're coming in from the opposite side of the base.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're up on the hill that you came out of the bottom of when you are on the big Nopada map in Colosseum. Right. And actually, the interior map is actually, if you look at it, it is a copy paste of the Colosseum map, and then they just at the areas we went on to, with the exception of the room with the gateway, they just built onto it. And the reason
built onto that because the gateway room is the same.
The gateway room is the same. Yeah. The Colosseum is fully modeled, and if you go up to it, you get a because the gate's closed there, but you get a comment about you reminiscing about fighting in there with Slavic.
Also, I noticed that when you scan for particle traces on the ground map, the scan points to the same locations that, at least I think it does, that you see the particle things in when you do the Colosseum. I think, not entirely sure, but either way, they're inside the Colosseum area.
Yeah, because it was that's left over from the copy paste job.
Probably,
and you can't get to them because the door is locked.
Yep.
You're making a new map and you want to use a map. Do you rebuild the map, or you just take the old mission, copy paste, and cut out the parts you don't need?
Oh, you might.
I would be willing to bet that if you were to look around on that map, you would actually find that it still has that random pit that the Colosseum map does. So something I noticed when I was tinkering with that map in the Foundry is that if you go up into the bleachers, at the end of one of the bleachers, there's this thing that's it's like a 16-foot deep hole that's just randomly located at the end of one of the bleachers. If you fall in the hole, you can't get out of it, unless you're maybe a Cation, but I'm not even sure a Cation could jump high enough to get out of the hole.
Easter eggs.
It's the things that you find when you play around with maps in the Foundry, because you can get to a lot more places But they didn't
And
want to
you
get
look in the dark corners that Taco doesn't want you to be in.
It's a funny
Sorry,
thing.
Taco.
When
Don't tell him.
It's
He'll
not-
put invisible walls.
I saw the reminiscing line, my thought was not about reminiscing about having played the Mission Coliseum, but the fact that I've used that map 3 or 4 times redressed. Like, oh, I remember when I used that in the Foundry.
It's very meta.
Um,
But of course, the big thrust of being there is that there's an Iconian gateway that you can use.
and
Why
Sela
is
getting
it
to
in the
mock
Foundry?
Hakeev.
Yes.
There's some 2 really good lines from Sela in that section when you're trying to get to the gateway.
Mm-hmm.
The first is when you're trying to, open that doorway, and then you go back and you're trying to do it, and you can't hack into it, and Sela just casually gives like the easiest passcode ever.
Yeah.
Just goes, always has a
Empress
back
one.
door. Yeah. Well, think about this. Like, that pretty much means she has like a backdoor in every single Romulan piece of technology.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, what she said was that basically that she wanted to be able to instantly access any computer anywhere in the Romulan Star Empire.
That's fairly classic her.
And, in order to do that on like a Tal Shiar computer, particularly Hakeev's personal terminal, that had to be in the firmware.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, pretty much every Romulan terminal in the galaxy is insecure.
Be funny if a
That has
couple weeks
wide-ranging
later,
implications,
all of
doesn't
the consoles in New Romulus Command have been replaced by Federation consoles.
Oh, knowing their luck, they get Klingon consoles.
it? Budget cuts.
And then immediately after that, you have the door slides open, and she just gives that great line mocking Hakeev. Another secret door.
Hakeev did like his secrets.
His over-the-top secrets. I mean, let's be honest. Hakeev is about as card-carrying a villain as you can get.
Oh yeah.
And Sela is not. So it's like putting William Shatner as a villain, playing maybe Dr. Evil next to like the Emperor from Star Wars.
It's probably, I think at this point they kind of realize all of their tropes, and so they're poking fun at themselves.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit. They realize how over the top Hakeev is. And scenery chewing and all that. But of course the real revelation of this scene is that our little Lieutenant Van Zyl, who's been with us the whole time, is infected with bluegill. And turns on us and starts shooting. But it's okay, we don't kill her. Not even
That's
on the
right.
Klingon side.
Nope. Although I was happy to see some of my feedback get actually taken by the devs. I've been kind of pushing for them to switch out the phaser models and stuff with the fleet ones, because I think they fit better with the 2410 stylings. Mm. And if you're playing a Federation, you pull out a fleet phaser pistol to shoot the bluegill.
I didn't actually. Oh wait, yeah, I do remember that now.
Yeah. Some people in the Starfleet Battles channel were talking about that yesterday, and they were trying to figure out exactly which mark level of fleet phaser pistol was used for it.
Elite wide beam. Yes, I know the differences between the phaser pistols.
Nerds. That's okay. I have my moments. Like trying to figure out how many people are on ESD. That was a fun thread. So yeah, once that little revelation is outed, we have a little fight, and we stun her and kill the bluegill and send her back up to the ship, and then we go for a little trip through what is totally not a Stargate.
Of course, it's not a Stargate. It predates those.
It does predate those, actually.
Although an interesting comparison has been made in the past that Wayne, someone who was worshipping a false god, was introduced in an episode with an Iconian gateway.
What's that one now?
To the death on DS9 season 4.
Oh, okay. You're saying the
Yeah. So Wayne was...
the founders are false gods.
Yeah.
I got you.
Durgan and I still have that plan to do a spoof of SG1 with an Iconian gateway.
It has to be set on Ryza. Then
be
you
so
can
easy.
justify the head tattoos.
Yeah, Primar is saying in the chat room that she takes off into the hallway towards the arena. That is not a bug. That's supposed to happen, I think, because she says something about, I'm going to escape now.
No, Sela tells you to stop her from escaping.
Oh, stop her from... That's what it was. So, yeah, she is programmed to run there. Which is kind of a neat little end to the fight, because, I mean, usually our fights are pretty standard. You know, we just shoot at someone until they're dead, and it was, wait a minute, she's trying to run away. That's a new one.
Yeah, there was some great new AI in this mission.
So, the Iconian Gateway takes us to another sphere, which actually you can see on our screen here.
But before we get into that, I did notice one interesting thing about Van Zyl from the fight. That is that she's a tactical officer. When you fight her, she actually uses a mixture of plasma grenades and sweeping strikes.
She also uses all the bluegill super punches.
Technically, she's intelligence.
Well, intelligence probably has a lot of tactical people.
Yeah.
Remember, specs are secondary.
So I guess she's kind of like Riker or whatever.
Worf, probably more Worf, because Worf was technically intelligence.
Okay.
So now we're on the Dyson Sphere, and Sela starts telling us some information about it. It's older than the other ones. And then guess who we run into?
Terrace!
It's Terrace.
With her really cool gauntlets.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that outfit.
Yeah, I noticed some costume pieces.
I took a close look at that. I'm like, wait a second. That's a distinctly Romulan outfit, but it's not the Republic, and it's not the Tal Shiar.
Maybe maybe we'll get it as a costume unlock when we get the full set of the Romulan armor and shields and what?
I personally think it's probably a piece of like Solanae technology she's put onto her uniform.
Nah, it doesn't look Solanae.
It's purple.
Herald?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, possibly Herald.
Could be Herald stuff.
Because she doesn't.
One of the things that I... Oh, sorry.
She doesn't wear it in Terrace, though. That's why I'm making the note.
Good
Yeah,
point,
it's obvious that she's been stuck there the whole time.
Yeah, so like, well,
'Cause
after Terrace, she was taken to facility. She was taken to facility 4028, and
That's right.
she was busted out. And we know that in the timeline of 2409, that took place just before First Contact Day. So, in that concept, she's literally spent about what 8-9 months on this Dyson Sphere, just struggling to survive.
Something like that. But she had some supplies with her because she set up some Romulan consoles in there.
Mm-hmm.
In her little lair or whatever it is. She escapes, and we have to try and open the door to follow her, and have several wrong tries, and then several condescending comments from Sela, as always.
Oh, that death trap room. She was that. That is my favorite line in that mission. Who even builds a room like this in a structure?
You know what all that reminded me of? It reminded me of, okay, so way back in Temporal Ambassador, when you meet Tasha Yar, and you're running across the gangway to the Enterprise C, and she makes all these comments to you as you're trying to lower the force fields. That is like, oh my god, like mother, like daughter. Jeez. Shut up.
I see, got her sarcasm from.
Apparently.
Yeah.
The difference
Well,
is
actually, now that I think about it, Sela did actually get raised by Tasha long enough to pick up her mother's personality
Oh
trait.
yeah, absolutely.
and you know what? I'll say the difference though is Denise was condescending as Tasha. Sela is at least amusing.
Yes.
I don't know. I thought Tasha was kind of amusing, especially the security protocol 147A clearly states, I don't think they've heard of that protocol.
Yeah, when the other NPCs start getting irritated at you, you've crossed the line.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it. Since when do Tholians read Starfleet regulations?
Or the
But
fact
anyway,
that she accuses you of not bringing down security measures, even though that's the job she's supposed to have. and that's.
But of
Anyway.
course, and we get this puzzle room, this maze with beams going along, which you do wonder is what is the purpose of that thing, and is it like a security measure or what?
Oh no, Sela actually tells you what it is.
She tells you what it is.
Yeah, it's part of it's a power transfer room, and the stuff that what she did was when she ran in there, she overloaded everything. And all this, that's why all those emergency force fields come up as their emergency security measures. But she damaged some of those so that she turned it into a death trap.
I guess her plan was to convince you to go away, and then eventually, after you went away, she was going to turn it off or something.
Yeah.
Because it's not like she had anywhere else to run to.
Yeah, she had absolutely nowhere to run to, which makes you wonder what she was exactly thinking she was doing.
Panicking.
Well,
Yeah.
Well, what it makes me wonder is when you're in that room with the shall we say force field instead of a floor. If you look around, there's actually 4 doors in that room.
Mm-hmm.
One of them goes to the gate. One of them goes to here. A third one has a pile of Romulan crates in front of it. And the fourth, well, it doesn't open in the mission, so we have absolutely no idea what it was used for.
yeah, but she would have had to have run back in our general direction to get to that one when we first show up.
Yeah, exactly.
The cool thing I thought is if that force field floor, if you look down, you'll realize that you can see it goes straight down out of the building, and you can kind of see you're looking down from a
I just noticed that on my playthrough earlier today.
from one of those
I have to
arch
replace
buildings.
I was
that you
like,
can
I was
go
like,
to.
oh my
all
God,
the
that
way
is cool.
down. It's one of those people look like ants from up here, and then you're like, oh wait, those aren't people, those are starships.
Well, my only complaint about that is that it looked fully lit. Despite what is said later about the sphere being dark.
Well, it is dark.
It is dark where you're standing.
Yeah. We'll come back. We'll come to that.
We'll come back to that because that was a big discussion topic on Reddit.
Yeah.
So you catch up with Terrace, and she talks about her plan to go back in time. And Sela reveals something that I assume she must have learned when she was a captive, that the Iconians can't time travel because they go nuts. It messes with their brains. Which, of course, makes Terrace's whole plan just fall completely apart. Which doesn't matter anyway because Sela kicks her off the ledge. Which I thought was pretty
Andromeda.
It's another
was
point.
pretty
Apparently, the
hilarious.
sphere is located in Andromeda Galaxy.
Yes, Andromeda.
For all of
Galaxy.
about 5 minutes.
Have we been there before?
No.
In Star Trek anywhere?
We have never left
There-
the.
We've
In the
had
original series, they actually encountered several races from the Andromeda Galaxy.
2, actually. The Kelvins, who are Federation members, and by this time, because Worf mentions he used to duel with a bunch of them in DS9, and the Andromedans, who I have actually no knowledge of personally, so I think they're from TAS.
Andromedans? No, that's one of the races from the Starfleet Battles games.
Ah,
In that continuity, the Tholians are actually refugees from Andromeda, and they used to run the place, and the Andromedans eventually kicked them out of the galaxy. And then when the Andromedans figured out that the Tholians came to the Milky Way, they chased them.
So we do at least know some of the races from there.
If I remember right, one of the races, there was some other race from TOS that was mentioned as having come from the Andromeda galaxy, but I think it was one of those visitors who left cool stuff behind before they died sort of races.
yeah.
Of course, you can chalk up some of this stuff to they didn't, back when they were making the first series, they didn't have quite a sense of the scale that later series would have. And so it was, people from another galaxy. Oh, that's easy. No big deal. Of course they're here.
There is an interesting thing, though, because they wrote in a really easy explanation as to why we kept seeing people from Andromeda, though. Because the episode with the Kelvins makes a specific point that there's been recently some weird disaster that's wiping out all life in Andromeda. And
the background radiation level in Andromeda was steadily rising, and the Kelvins had predicted that it would become uninhabitable within 2,000 years.
Yeah, and the only thing I can think of with, the fact that, now we know the...
Iconian.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. It's such an easy plot point to work in.
Something bad going on in a galaxy? Any galaxy. Iconians.
I also like to point out that this is, if they decide to do anything in Andromeda, this is a location that would literally be only accessible by an Iconian gate. There is no way we could transwarp or slipstream our way within any reasonable amount of time.
Well, we can. But apparently these Dyson spheres can.
Well, they use
because
that to jump.
This one jumped while we were on it.
The sphere jumping thing seems to be a variation of Iconian gateway technology, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's related to that for sure.
It's worth noting about the jumping as well that we haven't found any Omega particles in the Genolan sphere, and it's highly unlikely that this sphere used it either. So it definitely seems like there's differences in technology in these other two spheres compared to the Solanae one.
Like they use an older power source and Omega particles in an attempt to.
My personal theory about the Solanae sphere was we know it's the youngest of the spheres, and we also know that it was a sphere that was under construction when the revolts against the Iconians happened. And since the Solanae can't live in normal space and there was some disaster in the Solanae sphere, I get the feeling that the whole Omega thing was basically a trap to kind of keep the Solanae under control.
My theory is that it's actually the Iconians don't give their servitor races all of the technology that the servitors have. They give them bits and pieces to enhance their existing technology. So the Elachi have their own little method of using the technical secrets the Iconians have shared with them. So when the Elachi build stuff based on Iconian technology, it looks one way. When the Solanae do it, it looks another. And so each of the three spheres was created by a different servitor race. And that's why the technology used to put them together is somewhat different, because each of them built it to their specifications. Because the Iconians basically told them to build a sphere and didn't really, I guess you could say, give them the detail.
It's worth noting, though, about the Solanae sphere that there's a specific reference to the construction plans were related that they were going to be using it to power the gateway network. That never obviously came to fruition. The only thing that happened there was a huge subspace disaster, and the Solanae had to retreat into subspace because they were so heavily irradiated.
I'd also like to point out that all three spheres have the same architectural design, so I seriously doubt that they were built by different servitor races.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they were all built by the Solanae at some point.
Yeah, but I think
Actually, how much
the
do we even know about the Genolan sphere?
We know nothing. I mean, ironically, it's the sphere that's been studied the longest, and there is no details about it at all.
Obviously, they weren't able to find out much. Or those reports are classified.
Mm.
One thing that I thought of when I was comparing the two is that while both of them use similar, I guess you could say, white looks, and that weird force field floor thing that doesn't seem particularly practical, I don't remember seeing anywhere in the Solanae sphere where there was a force field floor that if someone was to turn off the force field, you would fall 100 miles to your death. I don't remember ever
it's seen on the core station or the sun station.
Yeah.
The sun station has those, and that's in the Solanae sphere.
I get the feeling that like those pits are like specifically, you have failed me. Goodbye. You're fired.
And the sun station, though, it has the force field floors, but they're not floors above a giant yawning void. They're basically like maintenance hatches almost.
Yeah, but they're the same floors.
Similar technology, I suppose, but they seem to be used for different things in the two locations.
Yeah,
I think it also gets used in the fridge of the what is it? That one carrier that you can get.
Yeah, there's the only one we've seen them that's a bottomless pit, though, is the one that Terrace was standing on. I'm pretty sure it's a case of you are the weakest link. Goodbye.
I think it's just Cryptic slowly like increasing their pull factor. Hey, well, why don't we do this? I don't think it was a design intent because I mean, clearly it's all following the same.
Sometimes you do things just because they're cool.
True.
Because, I think a lot of designers, and especially ones that I've talked to who actually do design things, is, they have a reason for everything they do. But when it's a fictional thing, occasionally you do things just because it's cool. And I am totally okay with that.
One thing that I was just pondering is that that the biggest aspects of the two things that's similar is the fact that they like to use round objects, and they use that specific material for construction.
Well, it's worth noting that material is also used for the sun station, so it's probably like a specific material they use for the Dyson spheres because it's so sturdy.
This seems likely, yes.
But
because they also
something that they have not said anything about in dialogue or anything like that.
Yeah, it's just that's the thing, though. I mean, we're talking about something really pedantic here.
Yes. So why don't we move on to the thing we were referencing earlier, that Sela, when she's talking to you, mentions that it's dark in this sphere. It's never dark in the other spheres. And then it's, the revelation of, oh my god.
Yeah.
Look at all the Iconian chips. We are so screwed.
And then we get the Sauron impersonation.
Yes, a little bit. Actually, I was more thinking the from the third Matrix movie, the machine thing that Neo speaks to.
Yeah, but it's Sauron that does the "I see you."
But the floating up and getting into your face, that was totally the machine thing.
Yeah.
However, I was also thinking Geth from Mass Effect because it kind of had a flashlight head thing going on.
A little bit, yeah.
The machine thing from the Matrix kind of did that too.
Mhm.
Well, you can see that, especially in science fiction, nothing exists in a vacuum. Everybody takes inspiration from different things that they've read, seen, watched, even
It's
sometimes
like the
without
saying goes,
realizing
there's
it.
nothing new under the sun.
Absolutely. But it was still cool.
It was-
And I quite like the ships. They look like nothing else we've seen before.
I'm kind of curious how this is going to fit with
Homeworld or something like that.
the one Iconian ship we saw back at the end of the Romulan featured episode arc.
It's worth noting that we haven't, in the season 10 testing, we have not seen the Obix class Iconian vessel show up at all.
Well,
and
here's the
actually,
thing.
we don't know that those are Iconian ships anyway. They could be Herald ships.
Which race built the Obex? We don't know that. We know that whoever built it was working for the Iconians, but the ships that we see in this sphere are apparently Herald ships. Which
It's worth noting, though, that it uses the same texture as the Obix ship. And in fact, it has a lot of the same graphical effects.
it doesn't have that purple cloud effect, though.
No, it doesn't have the purple cloud effect. I think that's specific to the Obex ship, although I could see them adding it to the Herald ships because there's a lot of there's places where the models don't add up, and I could see them adding it in later.
One other thing I thought of with that purple cloud effect is that there are two other places where we see a very similar graphical effect used in the game. One of which is known to be an Iconian servitor race, the Heralds. The other is probably an Iconian servitor race.
You mean the Fekleri?
Yeah.
Yep. There's been a number of people who've been saying there's a good chance that the Heralds are actually the Herc.
While that does seem like it might be a possibility, we'll have to see.
Well, we have no idea about what
We have
was
no
going
idea right now.
Yeah, we know.
In canon, there was never any description of what the Herc looked like.
No, the only thing we knew is that they could travel from Kronos to the Gamma Quadrant, and that would obviously require someone on par with the Iconians to do that.
Yeah, and of course there's the fact that they didn't use a wormhole to do it, apparently.
Yep.
Well, I mean, it's these kinds of details that Cryptic loves to jump on.
Mhm. Small little things from one episode.
I would like to make a quick comment on, did you guys take the dialogue option to actually read why the Iconians can't travel through time when you talk to Sela?
It's the
I
Because
did.
it
in the brain?
erases their memories.
Yeah, they have their brains are based around chronoton particles, which is really a weird biological thing to happen of everything in Star Trek.
Apparently, it's what makes them the masters of space like they are, because it allows them to do the calculations required to make their gateways work, even though humanoids apparently would require a supercomputer to do it, and Iconian can just simply think through the calculations.
Yeah, it's like because time and space is, they're technically the same thing. We just happen to move through time more than we do space. So for the Iconians, their minds function on that level. So their brains just function in the realm of space-time as opposed to as being confined by normal matter.
It's certainly a fascinating glimpse into the Iconians themselves, which we haven't had really very much information on them yet.
But what do you want to bet that time travel becomes a key part of how we end up defeating the Iconians?
Well, that's already
We already know some of that.
Yeah, we already know some of that.
It's been teased, and of course the Delta Recruit thing, we do know that somebody is time traveling to help us with that.
There's
And-
also
Go ahead.
there's also the plot point from Delta Rising. What was the first race that got attacked by the Vaudois when they came an Iconian servitor race?
It's the Krenim.
Yeah. So their first target was take out the time travelers.
Or the ones
Yeah,
with the time weapons?
Mhm.
Because the Crinum are basically pretty much, well, of all the races that we've seen do time travel in Star Trek, the Crinum have pretty much the scariest temporal technology.
And
Well,
They got those.
we were promised that the Krenim were going to have a big role in the STO after they won that poll, and then they didn't show up in Delta Rising, so they're building up for something there.
And we know
we do
that
know that wasn't Voyager on some special mission in Krenim territory, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
and Van Zyl said that they finished that mission. Oh wait, that reminds me of something. There is one amusing note that they put in about Van Zyl after all that stuff happened. Oh wait, we haven't gotten to that part.
Yeah, we'll come back to that.
Never mind. But yeah, Van Zyl said they finished their mission with the Krenim, and that's that. So she was going home on shore leave or something.
Not that we can necessarily trust what she says.
No,
At that
no,
point.
no. In the post section, she does mention though that while she was there, she got attacked by the bluegill. So there are bluegill running around in the Krenim to make sure they don't come after the Iconians anyway. So they multi-layer planned against them.
So do you think we'll see the return of the Krenim time weapon?
I don't know if we'll see the time
I think
weapon.
It's possible. In some fashion.
Because I mean,
I would
don't
like to
see it
see-
as being a matter of when or if, but how. What are they going to use it for?
I mean-
Well,
in this timeline, we know that the weapon was designed but never built.
well, that's
However,
'cause
the theoretical principles behind how it functioned were still understood by the Krenim.
Yeah.
So it's possible
And
that the Krenim
Anarax was still alive when we left him at the end of that episode.
Though it's worth noting that why it wasn't built in this timeline is an interesting point was that they made peace with those people this time around.
Yeah. And
Well,
it's entirely probable that Krenim still have the data on how to make that weapon stored somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
they show it at the end of the episode of Voyager.
Yeah, and
Because the weapon gets erased from time, and that manifests by Anarax choosing to spend more time with his wife than focus on building the weapon.
yeah,
So how
And they-
cool would it be if we had Anarax come back as a character in Stowe?
I better call someone a dumbass.
To be honest, I wouldn't expect Anarax himself to show up simply because of the fact that wouldn't he be like 300 years old by now?
No, because the new Anarax was like in his 40s when they deleted the time ship.
There's some unanswered questions at the end of that
Yeah.
because this,
No.
from our perspective, when did he start his crusade? From his perspective, it took 300 years, but he was messing with time and things like that, and they were outside of time. So, did he start his temporal crusade 300 years ago from Voyager's perspective?
I mean,
Well,
the ship is still moving forward in time, so I have to
But they
assume that
They also said that time had no effect on them, so
they didn't
it's
age.
not. They didn't age.
Anarax didn't seem to have the ability to actually time travel. His weapon ship, it had a cloaking technology thing where it could shift itself out of phase with space-time to avoid detection, but that didn't let it travel through time. It just made it so people couldn't shoot at it.
Yeah, I was just saying. I mean, it was out of phase, so it couldn't be harmed. But yeah, I mean, Mark's interpretation may well be right in that it did kind of seem to lend itself to Anarax being some 300 years in the past.
Yeah, it's.
But in any case, I mean, we could conceivably have his research for sure.
Assuming
Discovered and get it from the surviving Krenim.
Assuming that it wasn't destroyed with Krenim Prime.
don't know
Well,
that
it seems
Krenim
like
Prime
this
is
is
We'll
sort
see.
of
won't we?
information you would want to salvage, even if your art and literature got destroyed.
Yeah.
Besides, wasn't Anarax from one of the colonies?
Save your super weapons.
This is true.
Yeah, but most of
Anorak did not live on the homeworld.
But I think we actually went to that colony in one of the patrols, and it was in the middle of being attacked by the Vaadwaur and evacuated.
Ooh, I'm gonna have to look this one up.
Interesting.
Right, but that means that it hasn't been glassed yet, and that the people didn't get wiped out.
Yeah. We're launching lifeboats. Super weapon information first, then women and children.
Well, actually, the super weapon information, you could do that old routine where they roll up the important documents, stuff them in a teddy bear, and then hand it to a seemingly random child.
There you go. That's a great Foundry mission. Try and find that child with the teddy bear.
All right, somebody look up the planet he's from is Kyana Prime.
Can you spell that?
Kyana.
Yana.
Oh, in the Kyana system. Or I guess he pronounced it Kiana.
Blah blah blah. Trying.
Well, while you
hang
find
on.
that, we'll go on in the episode because we
Yeah.
run for it and escape the sphere. But the sphere has jumped into the Iconian system here. You go back through the Nopata gate, beam up to your ship, and go to Iconia, and oh crap, it's here.
Yep.
The question is, how long do we wait till Herald ships start emerging from it and kicking our butts?
Okay, there is one thing I actually have to kind of bring up. As we're hanging around the sphere, Dragoon, follow me. There's actually a little error here.
And the door's open?
Yeah, the door is open, and on Tribble, it's a big plot point that this sphere does not have a door.
Oops.
Yeah.
Did they use the same model that was
Yeah,
sitting there in the Gamma Quadrant?
Yeah, it's a
Delta
retexture of it.
Yeah, it looks the same, pretty much as the Joel sphere.
Yeah, it has a different exterior texture added onto it. But it's a big plot point in one of the PvE missions that this sphere does not have a door or a hatch or any outside method of you accessing it. The only ways in are to blow a hole in the sphere or to take an Iconian gateway in. And obviously it would take way too long to blast a hole in it without getting the heralds to attack us.
Or hiring the Undine to do it for us. An Undine planet killer.
Well, that's what we ought to do.
An Undine planet killer might be able to blow a hole in the hull. It's the only thing that we know of that could, though.
I have a feeling that we're not on speaking terms with the Undine.
The way Mindscape ended, it was a case of the Undine are withdrawing for the moment to debate allying with us, but they haven't come back and contacted us yet. So conceivably we could, we just haven't reached, they just haven't come to a decision yet.
And apparently the Kiana system is totally in stow. Or at least it is after the revamp.
Mm-hmm.
I assume it's currently.
Because there's I think it's I think it is already in game. Cause there is one point where we evacuate a Krenim colony that has just immediately fallen under attack by the Vaadwaur, and they're just rapidly trying to get people out of there. It's the one where you get attacked by the artillery barrages.
Oh yeah, were you doing that big massive evac?
Yeah.
And
yeah,
you have to. Yeah, that one was a pain. That was really long.
I don't remember. I haven't
one of-
played that one. There's
it's
some
one of the
high
patrols.
level ones. Yeah.
Yeah, basically they're evacuating the system, and you're basically protecting evacuating ships. And there's this long range weapon that you keep getting hit by, and so you'll see the sphere appear where it's going to hit, and you have to get out of range.
Mm-hmm. Pax, I'm just going to make a quick comment about what you're saying about, or Primar, about the fact that a Tethys did blow a hole in the Genolan sphere. Bear in mind that it blew a hole in the door, which is pretty thin.
It's probably
Relatively
gonna be,
speaking,
structurally a weak point.
Yeah, and the sphere does not have it, and it's like, what is it? Something like a mile thick hole.
Yeah. But you know, the full size planet killer that might be able to blow a hole all the way through.
Yeah. But I don't think they'd be very inclined to help us.
Yeah.
Well, if we explain to them why they should hate the Iconians, maybe.
They're good.
We did explain. We did.
That would be trying to get them to hate our enemies would be a very tough sell.
No, because we remember Tuvok convinced Cooper's mind ship. You know, he mind melded him and let that ship know, hey, this is what happened. The Iconians faked this whole thing. That's them who attacked you to turn against us. That's why while we're not on speaking terms, we're not actively at war with the Undine anymore.
Well, yeah, but they mostly just convinced them that, hey, throwing resources at us was futile and pointless. Not necessarily, you need to come join our side.
Actually, no, that was a point, because he makes a point of the needs of the many to it, and that, you know, the ship agrees and goes, yeah, if we work together, we'll survive, but we need to discuss this.
Yeah, the bioship didn't have the authority to tell the other Undine what to do. It could simply, but it could tell them why it thought they should do.
And it eliminated Cooper, who was leading the charge, so it would briefly give it a chance to explain what was going on.
So, we've talked about that one for quite a while. Let's move on to some discussion topics. Obviously, there's a lot coming plot-wise in the game itself, and I certainly don't mind discussions like that, because a lot of us try and fit our missions in with the plot of the game. So it's good stuff. But moving along, you kind of came up, SirBoulevard, with a couple of interesting topics over Twitter the past few days. So what do you got?
Okay, so the first one is the concept of, because those of you who aren't keeping track of Stowe news, because Stowe has gone SAG, they've had to let go a bunch of the actors, specifically Gabriel Wolf, who played Gaia Salon. This was Salon's swan song. And Lonnie Manila, who will be staying on staff because she's also the voice director. But she can't reprise her roles as Tanae or the computer voice or anything like that. So there's now all of a sudden a bunch of characters who are probably not going to be showing up again, or if they do, they're going to be completely revoiced.
I'm confused about this, because Stowe has been SAG for years now. This is not a new development.
No, not years.
No, it has not years. They went SAG in like August, but they also have a SAG allows for a set amount of non-SAG actors to work for you, because they can't expect you reasonably to alienate people who are just trying to get started. But PWE or Cryptic at some point, the executives said sometime in January that they're going to reserve their non-SAG personnel allotment strictly for Trek actors who are no longer in SAG or have retired from SAG. So, like, anyone who's retired from acting, like, say, Terry Farrell, if they wanted to bring her in as Jadzia in a time travel mission, Well, she's not an active SAG member, so they would have to use up one of their non-SAG allotments for her. I don't think Denise is SAG either, because she's been outside of it for a while, and she's been.
She still does a few things, but I couldn't tell you if she's an active SAG member.
Yeah,
Because
Or the
she was in,
SAG was
she was
something
in
that you
Walking
fell
Dead.
out of.
yeah.
I think
So-
I always kind of thought it was once you were in forever.
I
You
assume
can
probably
fall,
keep up with your dues, right?
or you can choose to leave it if you like do work elsewhere. Bear in mind that Denise was pretty much absent for a long period of time on television too.
Oh yeah.
Or if you go back to being a playwright, you mean you're not going to be in SAG because you're not a screen actor anymore.
Like I said, I couldn't tell you if she was active or not, but
Yeah.
Anyway,
she is still active
But-
occasionally.
Anyways, the important part is now all of a sudden we have a bunch of characters who are probably not going to be showing up again. Gabriel Rolfe, who played Gaius, was pretty much along the lines of, yeah, he's probably not coming back. And the plot point from this latest feature episode was pretty clear on the fact that even if Gaius is coming out of this okay, he's probably not getting his job back. So,
Actually, I
If someone
don't
can
know.
reprogram him, he's kind of a security risk.
particularly
Well-
as an intelligence officer.
Honestly, I think that it's just simply a matter of figuring out which specific thing in his brain it was that was letting them remote control him like that. And then,
It was,
He was
Makes me
using
hope.
Norton antivirus, and we all know how that turns out.
yeah, yeah. true.
Sela actually makes the point that it wasn't just the case of his Borg implants. They helped, but remember, he was also Tal Shiar, and Tal Shiar brainwash. Remember,
Yeah.
we see that and she makes a specific point. Once you're in there, you're in there. So
yeah,
And
it
she
gets
knows
very
the
personal
triggers.
if you're playing a Romulan.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you've been through that. But in any case, I think your question is, so if we have these sort of orphaned characters that may never appear again in Stowe missions, could they be used in Foundry missions?
yeah, definitely Gaius I'm thinking definitely the characters played by Gabe in particular, because they were fairly minor characters. Specifically Gaius, Rarak, who is the transporter chief from the Federation tutorial, who then shows up again, who hangs out at an ESD because he couldn't handle it after getting attacked, and then showed up
And then
in
he got
surface
attacked.
tension. Yeah. So, he's definitely the one that I think will end up being a really good one for the Foundry community to use.
Mhm.
Okay,
But
so
basic,
I was gonna say, we kind of started talking about this on Twitter, and
mhm.
my general feeling is a lot of these characters are what I consider low risk. In that, I mean, for instance, Burek, he's not likely to ever be used by Cryptic again. Not even, I mean, and it has nothing to do with his voice actor, and has everything to do with the fact that he stands around or space dock all day. So I think
Yeah,
it's a case of some
Yeah,
characters.
low risk is a good assessment. Because I think, there is still the possibility that these guys show up, but they are minor characters and they only do minor things. I think I would still shy, if you're going to use them, I would still shy away from making sort of major life changes for them.
Well, yeah, at
Mhm.
the end of
Like,
the end of your mission,
like
he
don't
still
kill,
has to
don't
be,
kill them off.
He still has to be
Um,
on our space dock doing his little console typing, handing out free environmental suits to lifetimers.
Yeah.
I also would recommend not attempting to explain their origin.
To a point.
You could
You can do it a little bit because
You can do it.
it's
yeah.
low risk, as we said.
Well, I mean, like that one thing that I was going to mention about Van Zyl is that if a player character was to have written a story focusing on Van Zyl prior to this mission, they might possibly have written her as a joined Trill. Then we find out in this mission that she is explicitly not a joined Trill.
Yeah, so you gotta definitely shy away from big stuff like that,
Mhm.
and assuming things about these characters.
Actually, that was one interesting thing about this mission that they talked about when you were reading about Van Zyl's status is that it's possible
It's
that Van
easier
Zyl might have.
for Trills, unjoined Trills, to be possessed by the bluegill, apparently.
Yeah.
Well,
It-
but
That was interesting.
that also, it's apparently a two-way thing when one of the bluegills possesses a trill. And
That's
and
right, because
that
it said she retained some memories.
yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh, that'll be a plot point later on, I bet.
I
definitely.
also have kind of written it in this my own personal headcanon is that's the explanation of why Admiral Quinn is a Trill in STO. Is that because remember the only admiral who survived the bluegill invasion in the 24th century was Admiral Quinn, who was human in the episode, but they hadn't introduced the Trill
Admiral
yet.
Quinn, yeah.
Yeah,
This is a different person, though. I don't think.
they could.
I never
they've-
thought it was the same person.
It's been kind of ambiguous because they at the same time they've been like, oh, Admiral Quinn's been around forever, and so it's been one of those things like they've implied it is and isn't the same character. Much like Captain Kurland was if you like went through some of the files, you'll see like some of the earlier stuff refers to him as Jeremy Kurland, who ironically showed up in the same episode as the first time we met Remick, who was taken over by the Bluegill Queen.
Yeah, see, I would always been wondering that if that was supposed to be that same Kurland.
Right, and they changed it because, you ended up having to do actors' rights and then explaining, you have to pay the guy to have the character. And so they just kind of
So they
went,
Tom Paris'd it.
they Tom
Okay.
Paris'd it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
the two Quins are definitely not the same person. They have different first names. We have our Jarrell Quinn, and the one from TNG was Gregory Quinn.
okay. Yeah.
In any case, these minor characters, I don't know. I think if you got a spot for them, I think you could use them. I think this could be something that we have sort of a community resource on is making skins for these people because of course a lot of them don't exist in the Foundry as NPCs already. So
I have on my DeviantArt a set of costume sliders for Jarrell Quinn.
yeah, I know
if
you
I
like to do
remember
this,
right,
Mark. So
This is one of those things we have to adjust it to get the height right afterwards, but it has all of the things that you need to get it to look like him.
Yeah, he's not.
Well,
too
I've
bad
got
to
the same-
create.
Yeah, I have the same thing for Satas and Jimpak on the Klingon side.
Oh yeah, I also made one for Loris and one for what was her name again? Who's Quinn's aide?
Linnea.
Linnea.
Yeah, I did a set for Linnea too, although I may not have published those on my DeviantArt. I'll have to
That's
double-
actually interesting. Linnea's probably one of the easiest characters to recreate in the Foundry.
Well, I mean, she's a launch character, so she's not too complicated.
You would be surprised at just how many tweaks I did to get it to look right.
Well,
I mean-
are those tweaks from before Zero changed the character model?
No.
When did she change the character model?
When they revamped Earth Space Dock, she changed Linnea.
Hmm.
So
Well-
Linnea has a more simplified face and new textures and so forth.
Well, my duplicate of Linnea was created in December.
Okay.
So yeah, that would have been after. So
So-
maybe that's something that we might have already something for this over on the Starbase UGC forums. Just kind of a central clearinghouse for skins of these minor characters that people can use.
Yeah.
Since we can't do import export anymore.
Well, one thing that I noted that kind of caught my attention was that doing Linnea's face was an order of magnitude more difficult than doing Loris. Because Loris, the general shape of her face, seems to fit one of the default female faces. Whereas either I didn't start with the right default female face when I did Linnea, or Linnea just doesn't use one of the default faces.
I've gotten her pretty accurate with one of the default faces. So Type 3, I think it is she's pretty close to.
Yes, I did use the Type 3 face when I did it. And actually, part of mine was trying to get it to work right with the Type 1, then switching types.
Actually, I think her head is Type 1, and then the texture is Type 3. So it's one of those kind of mix and matches that actually works together.
Okay, so here's a question. So we've talked about low-risk NPCs. Who are going to be your high-risk NPCs?
Okay.
Jimpock, I would bet for sure.
Jimpock, Quinn, anyone
the big
from
guys
the
are gonna show
Enterprise, or any
Yeah,
of
I'm
the other
thinking
three.
anybody from the flagships, except maybe with the exception of perhaps Guy Selen.
I will actually say, when we're dealing with these high-risk characters, that's not to say they're not usable.
Oh, very true.
No, not necessarily.
Because when you're dealing with Quinn or Sean or any of these characters, if you're not going into their character development, they're exposition fairies for the most part. That's what they are. They're there to spout the technobabble at you, send you on your mission, explain
call Jimpock a fairy to his face. I dare you.
And when I did diplomacy in the Gamma Quadrant, I actually had one of Jimpock's aides as the mission giver.
Yeah, I mean that's part of the reason why we have all the aides for the leaders of the great houses, why we have Linnea in the Foundry, is that these characters are relevant because of their connections to these characters who send you on missions.
Sure.
I mean, we also have Kyle DeSoto for Admiral Tanay, for instance, as well. And he's like one of the only intelligence people in the Foundry as a default.
Yeah.
But I would say the higher risk people are not those characters. I think those guys are medium risk. I wouldn't go about killing them off. I wouldn't go about doing too much in the way of backstory for them. Just to give you an example of one that's come across recently.
I wouldn't do that for most anybody else's other characters, Cryptics or another Foundry authors.
Yeah.
I wouldn't kill them off, without permission.
Yeah. I mean, I'm working with Dragoon right now. I made a comment, like we had a discussion the other night. We were talking about Marina and, a possibility that, I noticed that she used a fur color that Soft Canon says means she would have been descended from what would have been Kzinti royalty. So, meaning that she would probably be of an influential clan.
Yeah, this is a funny... Dragoon and I were joking about this the other day, is you have taken this character and run with it like far more than Dragoon ever thought about when he was making the character.
Seriously, I came up with just a basic understanding of her personality. I didn't really... other than what you read and when you talk to her, I didn't flesh out her backstory any.
It's only because I did all that research for when I did my series a year ago. And so I just happen to have all that information, and then I'm seeing this new character, and I'm like, oh yeah, well, I saw that, and you just start making those connections.
No, I'm tickled pink. This is totally cool.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of fun to watch this character.
Take on this is something that Foundry authors could do between ourselves. I'm taking one of at least one of Pax Federatica's characters and putting them in my missions, and obviously, we can work with the authors and do things with those characters that you would probably not want to do with a cryptic character, like invent huge long backstories for them.
Well, I suppose one example of that would be the backstory I wrote up for Endless. Because Endless's backstory is that she is a Vorta who was assimilated, but apparently she comes from a different universe because her genetic structure is different from that of Vorta in this universe. Not that Endless actually can give you any information about what makes this universe different from the one she comes from, other than the fact that Vorta have different biochemistry in the two universes.
So one of the things I will say that has been an example of a medium risk character's backstory being contradicted from a Foundry author's perspective, for me, is when I was doing Honor of, I ended up having to do something for Satas because he ended up ballooning in character role when it became 2 more episodes. And I ended up having to write a backstory for him. Not a huge amount, but he ended up writing in that he wasn't married and that he had an adoptive daughter. And that was the end of it. And he may have had something based off of Kestrel's lines that he had some connection to King Slathus, but that was it. That was her stuff, so that's outside of my role. I think it's Pax who's working on a story right now that has Satas. I think it's Pax. It might be someone else. And the hand wave he's come up with is that Satas is missing from the mission, and there's a different ambassador present because Satas's wife is giving birth. To give an example of how, these kinds of backstories can contradict each other eventually.
Yeah. That's
But you
kind of the
kinda
same
have to-
problem
if
that
you're
the
gonna
folks
use-
run into.
If you're going to use a Stowe character, you're going to have to keep up with it a little bit and
Yep.
keep an eye on it in case anything that they do contradicts what you've done. 'Cause
Exactly.
then you got to change.
And I
Mhm.
mean, at any time, there's always the risk that even a low risk character will suddenly become high risk. I mean, take for instance, Egan.
Yeah.
I would have totally said
He was pretty much
use
a
him for
nothing
whatever
character.
you want. They're never going to do anything with that guy. He's just some nobody standing around, and then they turn around and totally make him like
He was probably the
Undyne
most
and-
interesting nobody in the game, though.
That's the difference is when it came to Egan was hugely popular for no reason because it was one throwaway line that endeared him to everyone.
Mhm.
Much like the same way that Kurland was nobody until Porticus voiced him and it became Kurland here.
Yeah, but Kurland is in charge of Deep Space Nine, which puts him in a pretty prominent role. So that kind of
But
makes
he-
him a high risk.
It makes him high risk, but the difference was he was a high risk that no one thought about. And then when Cryptic changed Egan, it was because players had latched onto him despite him being a nobody. Same thing has actually happened with Linnea already because if you remember last year, Zero ended up doing like a mini kind of blog thing about Linnea on vacation, and then that actually got put into the game because if you hang out in Club 47, Nellen will actually reference Zero's little mini blog of Linnea going on vacation. So, and that's a character who has had no official dialogue from Cryptic. So that's the thing is they pay attention and they react to the community far more. Like they brought back Captain Maroney because after Memory Alpha went away, everyone's like, "Oh, they got rid of Thomas's character. That's not fair. They should bring him back." And Thomas went up to Kestrel and said, "Hey, everyone wants to bring my character back. Do you mind if I'm making this Pathfinder ship? You mind if I bring him back as the captain of it?" And she went, "Yeah, sure. I'll write that." So
Hey, that can't be right. The devs never listen to the players.
they do, and that's the thing.
They do all the time.
They do all the time, and when it comes to, I mean, Van Zyl coming back is due to the fact she was really positively received in the Doomsday Machine. She was hugely popular. Not as popular as Kavalk on his suicide mission, but people remembered Van Zyl pretty well. It's
I thought
really
she
when
needed
you
a
get
better intro in that mission, but otherwise, yeah, I liked her.
Yeah. Well, and that's part of the thing that probably endeared her is that she came out of nowhere. I mean, it's one throwaway line that they sent someone to help you out. But, she was such a good counterpoint to the player that, they started bringing her back recently because she fit in well there. Satas is another one who was really a very, very minor character at one point. I mean, he was pretty much there to explain, oh yeah, this is why the Gorn are with the Empire. Well, since then, he was a major character in Second Wave in the 2800 series. Now he's the mission giver for all the Klingon missions in Cardassian space, to the point that he's officially stationed there during that arc. And, he came back for surface tension, and they got him a pretty decent, for even when Cryptic was kind of struggling with voice actors, they got him Charlie Adler, a Cobra Commander. That's a pretty big actor to get for a minor NPC.
So
That is someone you would expect to be good at doing a hiss voice, though. Yeah.
And he now plays pretty much every Gorn.
And I want to see them do something with Sulu.
That would be fun, wouldn't it?
Totally.
So
really cool
we
that I
have
realized.
we have run into our time limit here. So Dragoon, if you want to throw up our contact info.
That's what happens. You get us going. All right. If you want to email us, we can be reached at foundryroundtable@live.com. We can also be found on Twitter at Foundry Roundtab. Drogan can be reached at Drogan1701. Mark here can be reached at Markhawkman. And I can be reached at Greendragoon. SirBoulevard?
He can be
Oh,
reached at SirBoulevard.
At SirBoulevard. Sorry about that. My mic was off.
All right, that'll do it for us. So say goodnight, Gracie.
Good night, Gracie.
Good night.